Welcome to the third episode of Stranger Than Fiction. These episodes are all about stories that sound 100% fake, but are actually 100% true. In this episode, we've got 3 stories, and they're organised so the craziest is last. If at any point you decide, I've heard this story before, or I just don't want to watch this story, then if you look down here on your timeline, there is chapters so you can easily click to the next story. So on with the stories. Mehran Karimi Nasseri was born in 1947. He was born in a Persian Anglo oil company settlement located in Iran. His dad was a doctor working for the company, and his mum was a nurse from Scotland, and she was also working in that area as well. He came to the UK in 1973 to study Yugoslav. It was a 3-year course. He studied at the University of Bradford, and after his studies had finished, he returned back to Iran. Nasseri alleges that he had been expelled from Iran in 1977 after protesting the Shah. The Shah was the leader of Iran at the time. So after he'd been expelled, there were many applications to many different countries for refuge. And he finally managed to get his refuge status from the United Nations High Commissioner of Refugees in Belgium. And this allegedly permits him to have residence in many other countries, which I imagine is true because that's how the European Union works. Having a British parent, in 1986 he decided he wanted to move and settle in the UK. But on his way to the UK in 1988, his briefcase was stolen. Nevertheless, he decided he was going to continue on his track to London. But when he arrived in London, the immigration officials said, "Can I see your passport, please?" And he went, "No, it was stolen." So they obviously went, "Well, we can't confirm who you are. You need to get back on your plane and go back to France." When he arrived in France, they said the exact same thing, and because it all seemed a bit dodgy, they arrested him. But his entry into the airport was legal, and he didn't have a country of origin to return to, so they just left him be. He was released. And this is where his residence in Terminal 1 at the airport started. With no passport or other documents, he was now stuck, stranded in the French airport at Terminal 1. His case was taken on by a French human rights lawyer called Christian Bourget. And in 1992, a French court ruled that because he'd entered the airport legally, they couldn't expel him from the airport, but at the same point, they couldn't and weren't willing to let him out of the airport into France. Attempts were then made to get Belgium to issue him new documents, but Belgium said, "We'll only do that if you present yourself in person." And then in 1995, Belgian authorities said, "Okay, we'll give you permission to travel to Belgium, but there's a condition: you have to live here under the supervision of a social worker." And obviously, he completely refused this. He says, "No, I was heading to the UK, everything was okay and everything was fine for me to go to the UK, that's where I'm going." Both France and Belgium offered him residence there, but much of the frustration of his lawyer, he refused to sign the papers. There were 2 reasons for this. One, that they'd put he was Iranian, and he said, "I'm not Iranian, I'm British." And they didn't show his preferred name, which was Sir Alfred Mehran. When contacted about Nasseri's situation, his family believed he was living the life he wanted. After living in the airport for 18 years, continuously, without break, without day trips or anything like that, 18 years in the airport, it came to an end in July 2006 when he was hospitalised, and as he was removed, they dismantled his seating area. Towards the end of January 2007, he left the hospital and he was looked after by the airport's branch of the French Red Cross. And he's lodged at a hotel for a couple of weeks near the airport. And then in March 2007, he was transferred to a Emus charity reception centre in Paris. Since 2008, he has remained in shelters in Paris. During his 18 years long stay in the airport at Terminal 1, his luggage stayed by his side. He spent his time reading and writing in his diary and studying economics. He received food and newspapers from employees at the airport. He had visits from journalists who were eager to hear his story, and he obviously had lots of letters of support from people around the world. Nobody likes a bully, and that's especially true for the small town of Skidmore. This episode itself could make an entire true crime cold case episode, but for the time being, we're going to leave it right here in Stranger Than Fiction. Ken Rex McElroy. He was born in 1934, and he was the 15th of 16 children born to a poor migrant tenant farming couple. He dropped out of school at 15 in the 8th grade, and he quickly established a local reputation as a cattle rustler, small-time thief, and a womanizer. For more than 2 decades, McElroy was suspected of being involved in 21 crimes of theft, including the theft of grain, alcohol, gasoline, antiques and livestock. However, he didn't get convicted of any of them 21 crimes because he'd intimidate the witnesses, so he'd follow them, he'd sit outside their house and watch them, and that kind of intimidation. McElroy fathered more than 10 children, and he met his last wife, Trenna McLeod, when she was 12 years old. She was in 8th grade, and I just want to point out that while she was 12, he was 23. He raped her repeatedly, and her family initially completely opposed the relationship, but then McElroy burnt down their house and shot their dog, so they relentlessly just said, okay, we agree. She became pregnant at the age of 14, dropped out of school and went to live with McElroy and his second wife, Alice. McElroy then divorced Alice and married Trenna. This was in order to escape statutory rape charges to which she was the only witness. 16 days after Trenna had given birth, both her and Alice fled McLeod's house and went to live with Trenna's mom and stepfather. According to court records, McElroy then tracked them down and then brought them back. He then returned to Trenna's mom and stepdad's house and then again shot the dog and burnt the house down. Based on Trenna's story, in June 1973, McElroy was charged with arson, assault and statutory rape. He was arrested, booked, arraigned and released on a $2,500 bail. Trenna and her baby was placed in a foster care home in Maryville, Missouri. McElroy sat outside this foster home for hours at a time, just staring at it. He even told the foster family that he would trade girl for girl to get his baby back. Additional charges were filed against him. On the 27th of July 1976, a farmer said McElroy had shot him twice with a shotgun after he challenged him for shooting weapons on his property. McElroy was charged with assault with intent to kill, but McElroy denied that he was even at the scene. As the case dragged on without a date, McElroy allegedly parked outside the farmer's house over 100 times. Then in 1980, one of McElroy's children got into a bit of bother at a local grocery store. They were seen trying to steal some sweets. The store was owned by 70-year-old Ernest Bowenkamp and his wife Lois. So McElroy did his trademark thing and he started stalking the Bowenkamp family. He eventually threatened Bowenkamp in the back of his store with a shotgun in hand. During this confrontation, McElroy shot Bowenkamp in the neck and he was arrested and charged for attempted murder. At trial, McElroy was convicted of assault, but he was freed on bail pending his appeal. Immediately after being released of a post-trial hearing, McElroy went to D&G Tavern, a local bar. In hand, he had a rifle with a bayonet attached. While he was there, he made some really graphical threats about what he'd do to Bowenkamp. And all the locals that were sat in the tavern at the time were looking at him thinking, we need to do something. We have to take some sort of legal action. We have to protect ourselves against this guy. At this point, the county sheriff decided to set up some sort of, well, he suggested to set up some sort of community watch program. On the morning of 10th of July 1981, townspeople met at the Legion Hall in the centre of town with the county sheriff to discuss ways we could protect themselves. During this meeting, McElroy arrived at the D&G Tavern with Trenna. As he was sat drinking with her, the word very quickly got back to all the people in the Legion Hall that McElroy was in town. The county sheriff very clearly and very strictly said, look, do not get in any confrontation with him, stay where you are, and seriously consider creating some sort of neighbourhood watch program. He then drove out of town in his police cruiser. Now at this point I've kind of got like a country western thing, oh there's going to be trouble, I'm leaving. But anyway, he leaves, very strictly told people, do not get involved, do not confront him, just create a neighbourhood watch, everything will be fine. So what happened? All the people at the meeting went, well, I think we ought to go to the tavern for a pint. And that's what they did. They all went into the tavern. And there was that many of them that the tavern was absolutely ram-packed. You could not get another person in there. It's as if every single person in this small town was in this tavern. McElroy finished his drinks, he picked up a 6-pack of beer, he left the bar, went outside and got into his truck. Surprise, surprise, while he was sat in his truck, somebody started to shoot at him. He was shot at several times and hit twice, once with a centerfire rifle and once with a 22mm rimfire rifle. In all, there was 46 potential witnesses to the shooting, including Trenna, who was sat in the truck with her husband when it happened. Nobody Nobody called for an ambulance. Only Trenner was a person to say, yeah, I know who the gunman was. Every other witness, all 46 other people, said that they couldn't name the assailant or they had no idea who shot the fatal shots. The DA declined to press charges, and an extensive federal investigation didn't lead to any changes. A Missouri-based journalist, Stephen Bauer, described the attitude of the townspeople as he needed killing. On July the 9th, 1984, Trenner McElroy filed a $5 million wrongful death lawsuit against the town, the county, the sheriff, the mayor, and the person who Trenner claims was the shooter, although he'd never been charged. The case was later settled out of court by all parties for $17,600, with nobody admitting guilt. Trenner remarried and moved out of town. She died of cancer on her 55th birthday in January the 24th, 2012. And as promised, I saved the worst to last. This is a war story, and I am going to be describing some very painful injuries and very painful scenes. So if you are sensitive to disturbing information, I thank you for watching, but this is probably about the time that you ended the show. Henry E. Erwin was born on the 8th of May 1921 in Adamsville, Alabama. Like many of his generation, he grew up in poverty and he lost his father at such a young age. Henry joined the Army Reserve on the 27th of July 1942. Called to active duty as an aviation cadet in the Air Force on the 3rd of February 1943, he trained as a pilot in Florida. But he did fail training due to flying deficiency. Although I did Google that and I don't know what it means. If you know what flying deficiency means as a term of washing out, please do let me know in the comments. 5 months later, he transferred to a technical school as a private first class. He completed further radio operator and radio mechanic training until his graduation in 1944. Assigned to the 52D Bombardment Squadron, 29th Bombardment Group and 20th Air Force in Texas, Edwin and his unit left for Asian Pacific Theatre in early 1945. From late February to the 1st of April, they participated in a series of unescorted strikes against cities in the heart of Japan. For these missions, Henry E. Erwin was now a staff sergeant and he received 2 air medals. He served as a radio operator gunner during his time in the service, and he was medically discharged from the US Air Force on the 27th of October 1947. He'd served 5 years, 2 months and 12 days. During World War II, he participated in the air raids on Japan campaign and the Western Pacific campaign. For his military service during World War II, he received lots of awards. He got the Air Force Aircrew Member Badge, the Medal of Honor, American Campaign Medal, Asian Pacific Campaign Medal with 2 Bronze Stars, Army Gold Conduct Medal, Purple Heart Medal, Air Medal with 1 Bronze Oak Leaf Cluster, and the World War II Victory Medal. But that's just Henry's overall story. Now let's get into the specifics of what actually happened. On the 12th of April 1945, Henry E. Erwin, who was nicknamed Red by his crewmates, was a radio operator on a Boeing B-29 Superfortress. The plane was flying in formation for a low-level attack on a chemical plant in Koriyama, 120 miles north of Tokyo, on the 11th combat mission. Along with their primary jobs, the B-29 crew members had additional duties to perform. Erwin's was to drop phosphorus smoke bombs through a chute on the aircraft's floor when the lead aircraft had reached a designated assembly area. It was given the signal to drop the bombs when the aircraft was just off the south coast of Japan. They were under attack by anti-aircraft and they'd had Japanese fire and all sorts, so the signal was given. Erwin pulled a pin and put it into the chute, but it malfunctioned and it ignited the phosphorus too early. Burning at 1,400 degrees Fahrenheit, the canister flew back up the chute and hit Erwin in the face. It blinded him, smeared off one of his ears, and absolutely obliterated his nose. Phosphorus pentoxide smoke immediately filled the aircraft, making it impossible for the pilot to see his instrument panel. Erwin was afraid that the bomb would melt through the metal floor and onto the bomb bay, which would create a whole different level of problems. So completely blind, Erwin picked up his canister that's over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit hot, and by finding his way around, feeling his way around, he managed to get past the gun turret and he heads for the co-pilot's window. His face and arms are absolutely covered with ignited phosphorus. And to make things worse, his path was blocked by the navigator's folding table. Although it was hinged to the wall, it was in a downright position and it had been locked. The navigator had left his seat to make a sighting, and Erwin just couldn't release the latch with one hand. So he grabbed the white hot bomb, it's over 1,000 Fahrenheit Celsius, and he puts it underneath his arm and holds it with his arm and his ribcage. In just a few seconds that it took to release the table, the phosphorus burned all the way through his flesh to his bone. His body on fire, he stumbled to the window, threw the canister of the bomb out the window, and collapsed between the seats. This entire time, the plane is on a nosedive, and the smoke had cleared just in time for the pilot to pull the nose up and get it clear. At this point, there was only 300 feet, that's about 90 meters above the water, when the pilot managed to lift the plane up. So he turned the plane and navigated it to where it could be landed and Erwin could get his medical treatment. His crew members extinguished his burning clothes and gave him first aid. But whenever Erwin's burns were uncovered, the phosphorus would once again start smouldering. Because you see, white phosphorus is known to cause extremely terrible wounds, because it can't be extinguished if oxygen is present. It needs to be completely suffocated. And if it's not completely suffocated, it will continue to burn through flesh until it's consumed itself or it's been extracted. It's also really toxic. Although Erwin was in excruciating pain, he remained conscious throughout the entire flight, and he spoke only to ask for the safety of other crew members. When the plane landed, the medical personnel expected him to die. Army Air Force officials approved Erwin's award of Medal of Honor in a matter of hours, so the presentation could be made while he was still alive. A medal was flown from Hawaii to Guam to be presented to him in the hospital. However, Erwin did survive the entire thing. He was flown back to the US, and after 30 months and 41 surgeries, he regained his eyesight and he regained the use of one arm. He received a disability discharge as a Master Sergeant in October 1947. That's all for this episode, guys. Thank you for watching. It is very much appreciated. If you liked it, please put a thumbs up. Please do subscribe. I want you to do one thing, that's it. If you're not subscribed, please do subscribe. If you are subscribed, please share the video. That's all I ask of you. Until next week, guys. Bye-bye.